Whispers between seconds. Chapter 1. Vanishing Masterpiece. The Barcelona night pulsed with an electric undercurrent as Detective Laia Vidal stood before the shattered remains of a high-security vault. Her keen eyes absorbed every detail: twisted metal, faint scorch marks, the lingering scent of ozone. To others, an impenetrable puzzle. To Laia, a symphony of clues. "It's impossible," muttered a uniformed officer. "The alarm never triggered. The cameras saw nothing." Laia closed her eyes, pressing fingertips to her temples. For a moment the world shifted, air thickening. She opened her eyes, a faint smile playing at her lips. "Not impossible," she said quietly. "Just improbable." As she surveyed the scene, Laia's mind drifted to the first time she'd experienced this peculiar sensation. It had been years ago, during a harrowing case that had nearly broken her. In a moment of desperation, time seemed to slow, revealing details she'd previously overlooked. Since then, she'd honed this ability in secret, learning to navigate the delicate threads of time that only she could perceive. Within the hour, Laia had unraveled the mystery, exposing a complex heist involving electromagnetic pulses and hidden tunnels. As the perpetrators were led away, she felt the familiar mix of satisfaction and unease. Another impossible case solved, another step closer to her secret being discovered. Laia's phone buzzed. Inspector Mark Roig's gruff voice filled her ear. "Vidal, we need you at the Museum of Contemporary Art, now." "What's happened?" "A Dali, vanished into thin air." 20 minutes later, Laia stood in the museum's modernist gallery, facing a blank space where a priceless painting should have been. The room hummed with nervous energy. Inspector Roig approached, his face grim. "Glad you're here, Vidal. We're out of our depth." "Walk me through it," Laia said, eyes fixed on the empty wall. "At exactly 3:17 p.m, every clock in the city stopped for 2 minutes, Roig began. When they started again, the painting was gone. No alarms, no footage, nothing. Laia's brow furrowed. Every clock? Every damn one, and nobody remembers anything unusual happening during those 2 minutes. It's like time just hiccuped. A tall, impeccably dressed man approached. "Detective Vidal, Anton Ferrer, head of security." Laia shook his hand. "Mr. Ferrer, I'll need to see your security logs, camera footage, and a list of everyone with access to this room." "Of course," Ferrer nodded. "But our security is state-of-the-art. This theft should have been impossible." "And yet," Laia gestured to the empty wall, "here we are." A young woman with dark-rimmed glasses joined them. "Sofia Casas, museum curator. Detective, this painting, it's irreplaceable. We must find it." Laia nodded, understanding the weight of Sofia's words. She turned back to the wall, eyes tracing the faint outline where the painting had hung. As she concentrated, that strange sensation washed over her again. The air thickened, sounds muffled. In that breath between seconds, Laia saw a shimmer before the blank wall, a ghost of an image, there and gone. She blinked, and reality snapped back into focus. "Detective," Sofia's voice cut through. "Are you all right?" Laia realized she had been standing motionless. "Fine, thank you. Just thinking." As the others discussed theories, Laia found herself torn. This case defied logic, pushed against reality's boundaries. Her instincts screamed that there was more here, something perhaps only she could unravel. But with that realization came fear. To solve this case might mean exposing her closely guarded secret, her ability to perceive time differently, to see echoes of moments no one else could witness. It was a gift she'd cultivated in solitude, afraid of the consequences should anyone discover her unnatural talent. Was she ready to risk everything she had worked for? Laia looked again at the empty space, feeling Sofia's desperation, the frustration radiating from Roig and Ferrer. She took a deep breath, knowing her decision would set in motion unforeseen events. "All right," she said finally. "Let's get to work. We have a painting to find." As the others nodded, Laia couldn't shake the feeling that she had stepped off a precipice. Whatever lay ahead, nothing would be the same after this case. The vanishing masterpiece was just the beginning, and Laia knew that her unique perception of time would be both her greatest asset and her most dangerous liability in the investigation to come. Chapter 2. Frozen Echoes. Dawn barely touched Barcelona's skyline as Laia stood before the Museum of Contemporary Art. Its stark white facade seemed to mock her, a blank canvas concealing secrets she hesitated to uncover. Her hand rested on the door, the weight of her decision palpable. "You look like you're facing your own funeral, not a museum," a voice chuckled behind her. Laia turned to find an elderly man watching her, eyes twinkling. His weathered hands bore oil stains, and the faint ticking of timepieces emanated from his leather apron. "Just contemplating," Laia replied, eyeing him curiously. "Ah, but time waits for no one," the old man said, tapping his nose. "Except perhaps when it doesn't." Before Laia could respond, he shuffled away, leaving her with an inexplicable unease. Shaking it off, she entered the museum. Inside, the gallery buzzed with activity. Forensic teams combed every inch, while Sofia Casas hovered nearby, worry etched on her face. Anton Ferrer stood off to one side, his piercing gaze following Laia's entrance. "Detective Vidal," he nodded. "Any overnight insights?" Laia met his eyes, searching for deception or guilt. Ferrer's face remained impassive. "I'm here for a closer look," she said, moving towards the empty space where the Dali had hung. As she approached, the air thickened. The room's bustle faded, replaced by profound silence. Laia closed her eyes, fingers pressed to her temples. Suddenly, ghostly figures shimmered into existence. A security guard, not Anton, stood frozen mid-stride. Near the painting, two figures in nondescript clothing were caught lifting the frame from the wall. Laia's breath caught. She saw the Dali's brushstrokes, vibrant and surreal, as if still there. The painting pulsed with otherworldly energy, distorting the air around it. The vision vanished. Laia stumbled, catching herself against the wall, heart racing. "Detective, are you all right?" Sophia's voice cut through her mental fog. Laia turned to find the curator watching her with concern. She considered brushing it off, but something in Sophia's earnest expression made her pause. "Sophia," Laia said quietly, "what if I told you I saw something impossible?" Sophia's eyes widened, but she leaned in closer. "In my work, detective, the impossible is often just the improbable waiting to be understood." Laia took a deep breath and described her vision in hushed tones. Sophia's expression shifted from skepticism to wonder. "You saw the actual theft?" Sophia whispered, glancing around. Laia nodded. It was like an echo of a moment that never happened, or that happened when time itself stopped. Sophia pondered this. "There's a Dali painting, not the stolen one, depicting a city frozen in time. Some say he had visions." A chill ran down Laia's spine. "Sophia, tell me everything about that painting. And," she hesitated, "keep this between us. For now." Sophia nodded solemnly. "Of course. But what will you do?" Laia turned back to the empty wall, resolve hardening. "I'm going to solve this case, whatever it takes." As Sophia hurried off, Laia stood alone. She knew she was risking everything, but her unique ability might be the only key to unraveling this impossible theft. The clockmaker's words echoed, "Time waits for no one, except perhaps when it doesn't." Laia squared her shoulders. It was time to embrace her gift, to chase the frozen echoes wherever they led. The game was afoot, and reality itself hung in the balance. Chapter 3. Shadowy Connections. The ancient heart of Barcelona, the Barri Gothic, pressed its weight of centuries upon Laia Vidal as she stood at its edge. Narrow alleys twisted like arteries through medieval stone, a fitting stage for her impossible case. In her hand, a small notebook held hastily scribbled observations, fragments of time echoes that defied explanation. Laia closed her eyes, letting the street's cacophony fade as she focused on the ghostly images haunting her since the museum. "Two figures," she murmured. "Nondescript clothing, but their movements, practiced, precise." She could almost see them again, frozen mid-theft, shimmering like heat haze. "Talking to yourself now, Vidal?" Inspector Roig's gruff voice cut through her concentration. Laia's eyes snapped open. "Just thinking aloud," she replied, closing her notebook. "Any new leads?" Roig shook his head. "Nothing. It's like the painting vanished into thin air." "I'm working on it," Laia assured him, suppressing a twinge of guilt at her secrecy. "I need to follow up on something. I'll check in later." Before Roig could protest, Laya ducked into the Gothic Quarter's maze. Her mind raced as she navigated the twisting alleys. The Dali theft wasn't isolated. A string of impossible heists had struck Europe over the past year, each occurring during unexplained glitches in time. Laya found herself in a small, unnumbered plaza where locals claimed time moved differently. She sat on a worn stone bench, reviewing the cases on her tablet. A pattern emerged, each theft preceded by subtle electromagnetic fluctuations, easily dismissed as instrument error. A name caught her eye: Dr. Elisa Pujol, a quantum physicist whose temporal manipulation theories had been labelled fringe science. Pujol had vanished from academia 3 years ago. Connections formed in Laya's mind, her heart racing. She almost missed the approaching footsteps. Almost. "Fancy meeting you here, Detective Vidal." Laya looked up to find Anton Ferrer, his tailored suit stark against the ancient stones. "Mr. Ferrer," she acknowledged, voice neutral. "I didn't expect to see you outside the museum." "I could say the same," he replied smoothly. "Finding any leads in these old streets?" Laya studied his face for deception. "Just following the evidence." Anton's eyes flickered to her tablet, a flash of recognition quickly masked. "Well, I won't keep you," he said, tension underlying his cordial tone. "Good hunting, detective." As Anton disappeared around a corner, Laya's mind raced. She dialed Sophia. "Sophia, I need everything on Anton Ferrer's background," she said without preamble. "Where he worked, his education, any scientific connections." "Of course," Sophia replied, excitement hushed. "But Laya, I found something about that Dali painting. The persistence of memory. Rumours say Dali based it on visions of time stopping." A chill ran down Laya's spine. "Send me everything. And Sophia, be careful, this is bigger than art theft." Ending the call, Laya noticed a shadowy figure watching from a nearby alley, melting away as she looked. Laya stood, heart pounding. She had stumbled onto something vast and dangerous, a conspiracy stretching across Europe and beyond. The name Kronos Syndicate whispered in her mind, an organisation that could manipulate time itself. As sunset cast long shadows through ancient streets, Laya grasped the depth of her rabbit hole. This was about the nature of reality itself. She took a steadying breath. Too deep to turn back now, the only way was through. With renewed determination, Laya set off into the gathering darkness, ready to chase time's frozen echoes to their source. Chapter 4: Surreal Underbelly. Neon lights cast an eerie glow over Laya's face as she navigated Barcelona's nightlife district. The pulsing music faded as she turned down a narrow alley, following Sophia's discreet directions. Her mind raced, recalling the frantic phone call from earlier. "Laya, I've found something," Sophia had whispered, her voice trembling with excitement and fear. "There's an underground group. They call themselves the Kronos Cult. They might have answers about the time anomalies." Sophia had then detailed the location and the specific knock pattern required for entry. "Be careful," she'd warned. "This goes deeper than we imagined." Now, standing before a rusted door, bearing a faded symbol of a clock face with wildly spinning hands, Laya took a steadying breath. She knocked in the prescribed pattern, her heart racing with anticipation and trepidation. The door creaked open to reveal a dimly lit staircase descending into darkness. As Laya descended, the air thickened with the scent of incense and old books. She emerged into a cavernous space that defied physics, an underground cafe stretching far beyond the confines of the buildings above. Scattered throughout were clusters engaged in hushed conversations. Attire ranged from conservative suits to outlandish costumes worthy of a Dali painting. Near the back, a group huddled over diagrams and complex equations. "Welcome, seeker of temporal truths," a melodious voice whispered. Laya turned to find a woman with silvery hair and eyes that swirled like galaxies. "I'm here to learn," Laya replied, using the phrase Sophia had provided. "Aren't we all?" The woman smiled enigmatically. "Come, join us. The Kronos cult embraces all who question linear existence." As they moved deeper into the cafe, a familiar sensation washed over Laya. The air thickened, sounds muffled, and ghostly images overlapped reality. Patrons frozen mid-gesture, conversations hanging visible in the air. "You see them, don't you?" the silver-haired woman asked, excitement in her voice. "The echoes of moments that never were." Laya's pulse quickened. "How did you—" "We recognize our own," the woman interrupted. "But be cautious. Not all who seek to manipulate time have noble intentions. Before Laya could press further, a commotion erupted at the entrance. A man in a sleek black suit burst through the crowd, eyes locking onto Laya. "The detective!" he shouted, reaching into his jacket. Instinct took over. Laya bolted, racing up the stairs and into the alley, pursuit close behind. She sprinted through labyrinthine streets, mind racing. Nearby Park Güell, Gaudi's surrealist masterpiece, offered sanctuary. Pushing harder, Laya wove through startled tourists, leaping low walls. As she entered the park, time seemed to stretch and warp. The world moved in slow motion. Laya focused, embracing the sensation. Phantom images of herself taking different paths overlapped, glimpses of potential futures. Trusting her instincts, she chose a route through twisting colonnades. Her pursuers' frustrated shouts grew distant. Laya didn't slow until she reached the park's highest point, collapsing onto a mosaic bench, breath ragged. As her heart rate slowed, Laya's mind raced to process everything. The Kronos cult, the syndicate operative, her growing mastery of temporal perception, all connected pieces of a puzzle she was only beginning to understand. She messaged Sophia. "Need everything on Dr. Elisa Pujol. Urgent." The response came swiftly. "Already on it. You won't believe what I've found. Meet me at El Relojador in an hour." Laya stood, legs shaky. As she left the park, she couldn't shake the feeling of standing on a monumental precipice. The painting theft was just the beginning, a test run for something far more ambitious and potentially catastrophic. As the sun set over Barcelona, casting long shadows across Gaudi's fantastical creations, Laya steeled herself. Whatever the syndicate planned, she was determined to stop them, even if it meant pushing her abilities to their limits. With a final glance back, Laya set off towards El Reloj d'Or, ready to dive deeper into the surreal underbelly of a world where time itself was up for grabs. Chapter 5. Temporal Crossroads. El Reloj d'Or loomed before Laya, its windows a kaleidoscope of ticking timepieces. As she reached for the door, a wave of dizziness washed over her. The world blurred, time stretching like taffy. In that suspended moment, she saw echoes of herself, entering the shop, turning away, frozen mid-step. Laya gritted her teeth, forcing herself back to the present. These temporal echoes were growing stronger, more frequent. She couldn't afford to lose focus now. Inside, a labyrinth of clocks greeted her, their collective ticking a cacophonous heartbeat. Sophia stood near the counter, her face pale in the dim light. "You look like you've seen a ghost," Laya said, approaching cautiously. Sophia's eyes darted around the room. "Maybe I have. Laya, what I found. It's incredible and terrifying." She produced a weathered journal. "This belonged to Dr. Elisa Pujol. It details her research into temporal manipulation, the theories, the experiments." Laya leafed through the pages, her heart racing. Impossibly complex diagrams filled the margins, alongside scribbled equations that made her head spin. "Where did you get this?" Laya asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Hidden in the museum's archives, misfiled decades ago. But that's not all." Sophia pulled out her tablet, displaying a series of news articles. "There's been a pattern of strange occurrences across Europe, momentary blackouts, unexplained equipment failures, all coinciding with high-profile thefts." Laya's mind raced, connecting the dots. The syndicate's been testing their technology, escalating with each success. Exactly, and based on Dr. Pujol's calculations, they're building up to something massive. Sophia's voice quavered. "Laya, I think they're planning to stop time on an unprecedented scale." The shop door chimed, cutting off Laya's response. A tall, slender woman with prematurely grey hair entered, her piercing green eyes locking onto Laya. "Detective Vidal," she said, her voice cool and precise. "I believe we're overdue for a conversation." Laya tensed, recognizing her from her research. "Dr. Elisa Pujol, I presume?" Pujol nodded, her gaze flicking to the journal in Laya's hands. "I see you've been doing your homework. Shall we discuss this somewhere more private?" Laya hesitated, every instinct screaming caution, but she needed answers. "Lead the way," she said, silently signalling Sophia to alert Inspector Roig. Pujol guided them to a secluded cafe patio. As they sat, Laya felt time warp around her again. She saw Pujol's lips moving in slow motion, heard fragments of conversation that hadn't happened yet. Ethical considerations. power beyond imagination. Can't be stopped. Laya shook her head, forcing herself back to the present. Why are you here, Dr. Pujol? Pujol's eyes glittered. Because you're like me, detective. You can see the echoes, can't you? The moments that exist between seconds. Laya's breath caught. How did you... I've been studying people like us for years, Pujol interrupted. We're living proof that time isn't the rigid construct most believe it to be. With the right technology, we can reshape reality itself. And the syndicate? The thefts? Laya pressed. Pujol's expression hardened. Necessary steps. You can't change the world without ruffling a few feathers. You're talking about playing God, Laya said, her voice low. The consequences are beyond your comprehension, Pujol snapped. We're on the verge of a breakthrough that will revolutionize human existence. Don't you see? We could prevent disasters, rewrite history, or create chaos on an unimaginable scale, Laya countered. Pujol leaned forward, her eyes blazing. I'm offering you a chance to be part of something extraordinary, detective. Join us. Help us shape the future. For a moment, Laya saw it. A world where time bowed to human will, where death and suffering could be undone with the push of a button. But in that same instant, she saw the horror of a reality unmoored, where cause and effect meant nothing. No, Laya said firmly. Whatever you're planning, I will stop you. Pujol's face hardened. Then you've made your choice. She stood abruptly. The wheels are already in motion, detective. In 24 hours, we make history, or we unmake it. The Sagrada Familia will be our stage. Before Laya could respond, Pujol vanished into the evening crowd. Laya sat frozen, her mind reeling. The syndicate's plan was clear now, a heist on an unprecedented scale, targeting Gaudi's unfinished masterpiece. But why? What could they hope to gain by stopping time in Barcelona's most iconic landmark? Her phone buzzed, a message from Sophia. Encrypted files decrypted. You need to see this, now. Laya stood, her resolve hardening. She had 24 hours to unravel the syndicate's true objective and prepare for a confrontation that would push her abilities to their limit. As she navigated the busy streets, time continued to fluctuate around her. Ghostly figures appeared and vanished, scenes from possible futures overlapping with the present. Laya forced herself to focus, to use these glimpses as a tool rather than a distraction. The fate of Barcelona, perhaps of reality itself, rested on her shoulders. And the clock was ticking. In the gathering dusk, the spires of the Sagrada Familia loomed on the horizon, a silent sentinel to the temporal storm brewing beneath its carved facade. Tomorrow it would become a battleground where the very fabric of time hung in the balance. Laya quickened her pace. She had preparations to make, allies to gather. The final confrontation awaited, and she would meet it head-on, no matter the cost. Chapter 6. Frozen Cathedral. The Sagrada Familia loomed before Laya, its spires piercing the pre-dawn sky. Her heart thundered as she stood at the base of the great basilica. In moments, the Kronos Syndicate would attempt to freeze time on an unprecedented scale, not just as a demonstration of power, but as a crucial step in their grand design. Laya's mind raced, recalling Sophia's frantic explanation from their decrypted files. The Sagrada Familia wasn't just an architectural marvel, it was a nexus point of ley lines, a convergence of mystical energies that Gaudi had intuited and incorporated into his design. By freezing time here, the Syndicate aimed to create a temporal anchor, a fixed point from which they could manipulate the fabric of reality across the globe. She closed her eyes, steadying her breath. When she opened them, the world had changed. The air thickened, sounds muffled, and ghostly overlays of potential futures shimmered around her. Now, she whispered into her concealed microphone. Reality stuttered. Pigeons hung suspended mid-flight. A drop of dew paused in its descent. Barcelona held its breath. Laya moved swiftly through a side entrance, Sophia's access card granting her entry. Inside, the basilica was a surreal dreamscape of frozen light and shadow. The intricate geometries of Gaudi's design seemed to pulse with latent energy, as if aware of the Syndicate's impending manipulation. She navigated the crystallized tableau, her enhanced perception guiding her past motionless tourists and guards. Ahead, a shimmer betrayed movement, others immune to the time stop. Rounding a column, Laya faced Anton Ferrer, his eyes narrowed with determination. "Detective Vidal," he said, voice distorted in the thick air. "I had hoped you'd join us willingly. You could have been part of history." "Sorry to disappoint," Laya replied, eyeing the device in his hand, a smaller version of Pujol's quantum technology, specifically calibrated to resonate with the basilica's unique energy signature. "You have no idea what you're interfering with," Anton smirked. "We're not just reshaping reality, we're stabilizing it. With this temporal anchor, we can prevent catastrophes before they happen, rewrite history for the better." "You're playing with forces you can't control," Laya countered, inching closer. "The ripple effects could be devastating." Two masked syndicate operatives emerged from behind the frozen congregation, positioning themselves near key structural points of the basilica. "Enough talk," Anton snapped, raising the device. The world rippled. Laya dove behind a marble column as a wave of distorted time washed over her previous position. The stone aged centuries in seconds, crumbling to dust. She closed her eyes, focusing on the ebb and flow of time. When she opened them, she saw echoes of moments yet to come. Anton raising the device again, aiming for a central point where Gaudi's geometries converged. An operative flanking her left, ready to activate a secondary device, the other reaching for a weapon, prepared to defend their position at all costs. Laya moved with impossible precision, flowing between potential futures. Anton's next blast went wide, disintegrating a stained glass window. She evaded one operative and disarmed the other, using his own momentum against him. The battle raged in fractions of seconds stretched to eternity. Laya used Gaudi's bizarre architecture to her advantage, each frozen tableau becoming a weapon or shield. She could feel the building's latent energy pulsing stronger, reacting to the syndicate's attempts to harness it. "You can't stop progress," Anton roared, his composure cracking. "With this anchor we can reshape the world, prevent wars, cure diseases before they spread." "This isn't progress," Laya retorted. "It's playing God, and the consequences could be catastrophic." She saw her opening, as Anton raised the device, preparing to channel the basilica's energy into a permanent temporal stasis. Laya feinted left, then spun right. Her hand closed around the quantum manipulator just as he triggered it. Time fractured. Laya found herself in a maelstrom of shattered moments. She saw the basilica's construction in reverse and witnessed future masses filled with unborn worshippers. Through it all, she held on, feeling the overwhelming power of the ley line convergence threatening to tear reality apart. With a sound like reality tearing, Laya wrenched the device from Anton's grasp. The temporal storm collapsed, snapping them back to the frozen present. Anton staggered, face pale. "You don't know what you've done," he gasped. "The anchor point. Without it, our plans." "I know exactly what I've done," Laya said firmly. "I've stopped you from ripping apart the fabric of time itself." The air shimmered as Inspector Roig and a tactical team materialized, their movements sluggish as they adjusted to the time stop. "Impeccable timing," Laya quipped, feeling the basilica's energy settle back into its natural state. Roig's eyes widened, taking in the scene. "I don't suppose you have a simple explanation for all this?" he asked dryly. Laya glanced at the device in her hand, now inert without the Sagrada Familia's unique energies to power it. "Nothing simple about it, I'm afraid, but I have a feeling Barcelona will be owing me some overtime." As Roig's team secured the syndicate members, time resumed its normal flow. The basilica erupted into chaos as tourists and staff tried to make sense of the inexplicable changes. Laya stepped outside, breathing in the cool morning air. The sun painted the sky in hues of pink and gold. To the oblivious city awakening around her, it was just another dawn. But Laya knew better. In her hand, she held the remnants of a device that could have reshaped reality, along with the weight of knowing just how close the world had come to unraveling. As sirens wailed and curious onlookers gathered, Laya steeled herself for the challenges ahead. The syndicate was stopped, but the questions they'd raised about time, reality, and the power of sacred geometry were far from over. She looked up at the Sagrada Familia, its spires reaching skyward. In the play of light and shadow, Laya almost saw echoes of alternate timelines, paths not taken, worlds where the syndicate had succeeded in their mad plan. With a deep breath, she turned away. There would be time for philosophical ponderings later. For now, there was work to be done, explanations to give, and a city to protect from truths it might not be ready to face. Laia squared her shoulders and walked towards the gathering crowd, ready to confront whatever consequences her victory had set in motion. The Sagrada Familia stood behind her, a silent guardian of time's mysteries, its secrets safe for another day. Chapter 7. Persistent Memory. Dawn broke over Barcelona, bathing the Sagrada Familia in pale light. Laia Vidal stood at its base, the quantum manipulator a weighty presence in her hand. Around her the city stirred to life, oblivious to the battle that had raged beyond time's perception. Sirens pierced the morning air as emergency services converged on the scene. Inspector Roig efficiently coordinated the arrest of Anton Ferrer and his associates, their faces etched with defeat and lingering defiance. "What do we do with this?" Roig asked, nodding towards the device Laia held. She gazed at the quantum manipulator, feeling its power pulse beneath her fingertips. For a moment, she entertained the possibilities. With this technology, she could reshape reality itself, prevent crimes, save lives, alter history. The temptation was intoxicating. Laia closed her eyes and the world shifted. She witnessed echoes of potential futures branching out like fractals. In one, she thwarted a terrorist attack. In another, she saved a child from a tragic accident. But as she delved deeper, the consequences of each alteration became clear, ripples of change spreading outward, reshaping the world in unpredictable ways. "We destroy it," Laia said, opening her eyes. "The risk is too great." Roig nodded, relief evident in his expression. "I'll have our team dismantle it under secure conditions." As she relinquished the device, Laia felt a weight lift from her shoulders. Yet, a new burden settled in its place. The knowledge of what might have been, of the power she had chosen to surrender. In the days that followed, as Barcelona resumed its normal rhythm, Laia grappled with the ethical implications of her actions. She had used her unique ability to perceive time differently, to witness moments invisible to others. Had she violated some cosmic law by interfering with the natural flow of events? One evening, as sunset painted the sky in vibrant hues, Laia found herself in the small, unnumbered plaza where locals claimed time moved differently. She sat on a worn stone bench, observing passers-by, unaware of the temporal drama that had unfolded in their city. A familiar figure approached, the elderly clockmaker she had encountered at the investigation's outset. "You look troubled, detective," he said, settling beside her. Laia smiled wryly, "Just contemplating the nature of reality." The old man chuckled. "A weighty topic for such a beautiful evening." "I've seen things," Laia began, then paused. "Things that challenge everything I thought I knew about time and reality." The clockmaker nodded sagely. "And now you wonder if you've done the right thing, stepping back from that precipice of power." Laia looked at him sharply. "How did you—" "My dear," he interrupted gently, "when you've spent as long as I have watching the gears of time turn, you learn to recognize the signs of someone who's glimpsed behind the curtain." They sat in silence, the plaza alive with evening sounds. "You know," the clockmaker said finally, "there's a theory that every decision creates a new timeline, branching into infinity. Perhaps in choosing not to use that device, you've preserved the integrity of this particular branch of reality." Laia considered his words. "But my ability, seeing these echoes of time, isn't that still interfering?" The old man smiled. "Or perhaps it's simply your role in the grand mechanism of the universe, a cog designed to keep the clock of reality ticking smoothly." As stars emerged overhead, Laia felt a sense of peace settle over her. She had made her choice, embracing her unique perspective while respecting the delicate balance of time and causality. Yet, as she bid farewell to the clockmaker and navigated the bustling streets of Barcelona, Laia couldn't shake a lingering sense of isolation. She alone carried the memory of those frozen moments, of the battle fought between seconds. Passing the Sagrada Familia, its spires reaching skyward, Laia paused. In the play of shadows across its facade, she glimpsed ghostly echoes of alternate timelines, paths not taken. She allowed herself one last moment of wonder at the fragile nature of perceived reality. Then, with a deep breath, Laia turned away. The city pulsed with life around her, its citizens blissfully unaware of how close they had come to having their reality unravelled. And perhaps, she thought, that ignorance was a gift in itself. As she walked into the warm Barcelona night, Laia Vidal embraced her role as the keeper of time's secrets. The weight of her knowledge was a burden, yes, but also a responsibility she now understood she was uniquely equipped to bear. The clock of the world ticked on, and Laia moved with it, a guardian of moments both seen and unseen, preserving the delicate tapestry of time one case at a time.